Hi, I'm attorney Kimberly Agoin, and of course, this is the Let Me Clear My Throat podcast. I'm so happy to be with you today because we know that it appears that we tend to be in a perpetual election cycle here in the state of Illinois, city of Chicago, and even around the entire country. And every time we're told this is the most important election of our lives, but too often, Black people, African Americans, are not feeling any change from the elected officials that we get in office. We have more Black elected officials than we have ever had. And I know that we just lost the great Reverend Jesse Jackson Sr. We can honestly say that from the beginning of his life, when there were very few African American electeds, to when he progressed, and it was very important to get African Americans in office, I can almost say with a certainty that when they put African Americans in office, they were expecting to receive and get a very strong result from having African Americans. They could almost guarantee that those people were going to work on their behalf. But too often right now, when we see the electeds that we have, people beg for our votes. They go to office. We get very little in return until it's time for people to come back again to speak with us once again. And what I'm seeing right now, what I'm hearing right now in the street, right, is that there is not a very strong appetite to vote anymore from a lot of African American people because they're not seeing any return. We can't act like that's strange. That's actually very rational. If you feel like you keep participating in a system, you're not going to keep doing it just because people died to give you the right to vote, when your streets are still messed up, when people are being killed left and right, when you aren't seeing any equity, when you're not seeing any resources come back to your neighborhood, but you keep sending people who look like you to those offices, you're not going to continue to do that. I'm concerned that we are going to have this election on March 17th and that the turnout is going to be very low in our communities for that exact reason. And as I watch the debates and the forums, I am seeing African American anchors, journalists, get the opportunity to sit in front of the candidates and still not ask any questions about why African Americans should feel motivated to vote and what is going to change if we send these people to office, whatever race they are. What is going to change for our people who are suffering so much around this country because of we pay the tax dollars, but they don't come back to us. So I felt it was important to talk to at least the people who were running for the United States Senate seat, which is the junior senator from the state of Illinois. I reached out to all of the candidates, and that would be the main candidates for the Democratic nomination. That's Lieutenant Governor Juliana Stratton, that's Congressman Raja Krishnamoorthi, and that's Congresswoman Robin Kelly. So we want to hear from them so that we can ask the questions that are important to our community to see if we can get rid of some of this stubborn poverty, some of this stubborn inequity, and actually be able to be proud of where we are and have the neighborhoods reflect everything that we have put into them. We fought a lot for this. We work every day. We pay taxes. We're doing the things that we are supposed to do, and yet many of our neighborhoods still look bombed out like what you see in Gaza or what you're seeing right now in Iran. And this is not all about what President Trump is doing. Yes, his administration is doing some dastardly deeds in some cases, but this has been a stubborn problem no matter who is in office, and it's at every level from the local level all the way up to the federal level. So we're going to ask those questions that you have been asking me when I'm out talking with you. So I hope that you really listen to the candidates, and hopefully they all will take the invitation to come and speak with us, because it's going to be a fair and even platform for everyone to come and share why we should vote for them. So I hope you enjoy it. So as we approach March 17th, we know in the city of Chicago, state of Illinois, and in the entire country, so much is at stake with this next election, especially with the backdrop of many policy decisions, let's just say that, by the current federal administration, the current president, as well as Congress. There's a chance that Congress will change hands. But in the state of Illinois, city of Chicago, one of the things that is most important to our community is this idea that Illinois is experiencing a significant decline in the Black population. Now, we're talking about people that just over 100 years ago, maybe 105 years ago, made the great migration to places like Illinois in order to run away from discrimination and just dire situations, to this idea that in a 10-year span between 2012 and 2022, the Black population in the state dropped by almost 3.5%, or even there's been an exodus from the city of Chicago with a decline of nearly 25% between 2000 and 2019. Many of those people running from Chicago first to the Southland, but then from the Southland to places like Texas, to the South, again, as an almost reverse migration. We have got with us today the current lieutenant governor of the state of Illinois, who also is running to be the next junior senator from the state of Illinois in the United States Senate. And if I am reading the latest poll correctly, she has a real chance. It sounds like she may have even taken the lead in this race, where there are three extremely competitive people vying for the Democratic nomination. So I want to ask you, Lieutenant Governor Juliana Stratton, first of all, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
I want to ask you, given the set of circumstances that I have laid out in front of you, the concerns of African Americans and Black people in the state of Illinois, what is your top priority should you be elected as the junior senator from the state of Illinois to the United States Senate?
Well, thank you again for having me. And let me just start by saying I'm very proud of the work that Governor Pritzker and I have been able to do in the state of Illinois over the last 7 years as governor and lieutenant governor. We know that we inherited a government from the previous governor that had seen so much instability, so much chaos, and we came in and we've passed 7 consecutive balanced budgets, really brought that fiscal stability and financial stability to our state. We've created thousands of jobs. We've raised wages and made record investments, not just in our infrastructure, but record investments into education, including some of our most under-resourced schools and communities. So I'm proud of that work, but look at what's happening in Washington right now. We have seen Donald Trump really ignite a 5-alarm fire. And when you have a president that strips away health care from millions of Americans, rips food out of the mouths of hungry children, ends funding, grant funding, and other funding to help create more equitable communities, and does so really just because a state like Illinois dares to stand up to him, then it's a real fight on our hands. And it's why right now, every single day when I'm traveling the state and talking to people about what they're looking for, more than anything else, what people say is they're looking for someone who will go to the mat fighting for them. And I'm proud I can look them right back in the eye and say, that's exactly the leader I will be.
And that's fair enough, because we are very familiar with the administration beforehand. When Governor Rauner was in office, some of us fought to have the child care funding restored, during his administration, as far as early childhood education. And, there were cuts to that. There were cuts to human services, and we get that. But in many cases, I'm talking to Black people every day. I'm not feeling a great sense of urgency. I'm really concerned about the turnout, because to many African Americans, they feel like they are surviving every administration that gets in office. So while there are things that have been done and there has been funding, and to your point, there are things that have been done as far as balanced budgets, et cetera, we're talking about Illinois having the highest unemployment rate for African Americans or Black people right now. We're talking about having the lowest wealth levels. For example, a Black family in Chicago has $0 compared to $210,000 for white families, which is showing this amazing wealth gap. We're talking about poverty rates. So the question that I would have is, should you become, let's just put it this way, when Black people are deciding that they're going to go to the polls on March 17th, what can they expect from you should they choose your name? What should motivate them besides what Donald Trump is doing? keeping in mind that Black people feel like they have literally just been trying to survive every administration in the state of Illinois. How will they feel seen by you?
Yeah, well, the same way that I know that they felt seen, at least that's what I'm hearing from our communities every single day that I'm on the trail, that I've been there, I've represented the whole state. I'm the only candidate in this race that has represented the whole state. And when I show up in communities, people don't say, oh, this is the first time we've ever seen you. They know that they've seen me over and over again, that I've listened to them. Let me give you some examples of that.
Please do.
Um, you know, I'm very proud of, for example, what we've done to protect reproductive freedom in the state of Illinois. The governor and I are very proud that Illinois is an island for reproductive freedom. But I called the governor a couple of years ago and said, look, Black women are still dying at a rate that's 3 times that our white counterparts from pregnancy related complications. And so while I'm proud of that, we need to do more. And because of my leadership now, doulas and midwives and lactation consultants are covered whether you have Medicaid or private insurance. That's an example of why my lived experience as a Black woman, being at the table, being in the rooms where decisions are being made, has been critical. I think about what I want to do. My platform is called Give the People What They Want. What do I hear people saying from our communities and communities all across Illinois? They want higher wages. Right now, the federal minimum wage is $7.25. No one who is concerned about economic equity, no one who is concerned about closing the wealth gap would ever think that $7.25 an hour is something that a family can live on, and not even an individual. And I'm proud that we worked to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour in Illinois. But guess what? That's $31,200 a year. So I'm proposing to fight for a $25 an hour minimum wage, because we shouldn't keep talking about the bare minimum. If we really want to make some headway into closing the racial wealth gap and just closing the economic wealth gap, we need to help people make a livable wage so that they have some money in their pockets, can save for their future, take care of their families, and hopefully spend in some of our small businesses. I'm fighting for Medicare for all because we know that healthcare is one of the biggest issues around affordability, and Black communities are disproportionately impacted by medical debt, not having access to doctors and the healthcare that they need. Just this week, the governor and I announced over $1 billion that we have erased in medical debt. And that has had a disproportionate impact on Black communities. That's an example of a real life solution to an economic issue that impacts our communities. So by erasing that medical debt, more people are going to be able to buy homes and start businesses and take care of their children. But at the federal level, what I want to do is I want to see Medicare for all. I believe in universal health care because no one should go without a doctor when they're sick. And too many Illinoisans are deciding, do I pay my bills or do I go to the doctor? And it is wrong. I want to see a tax break for middle class families. What have we done in Illinois? We eliminated the grocery tax. We've lowered the cost of prescription drugs. We've done so much to make life more affordable for, including raising wages for Illinoisans. But there's more that needs to be done. This is a president who said that he was going to lower inflation on day one. He hasn't done that. He hasn't lowered the cost of groceries like he said. So I'm a person who, just like every one of you who's listening in, who, when I go to the grocery store, you start making decisions. Do I get this or that? Because it's more expensive now. I have daughters myself who are wondering, will I ever be able to own a home in this economy? I have another daughter who said, look at my ACA premium from last year compared to this year. I'm going to have to get the lowest level for benefits. None of us want that for ourselves or our children. We need to have bold, courageous leadership that's going to fight to make a change. And I'll tell you this much, people aren't looking at Congress right now and saying, that's the kind of energy I want to see. People are fed up. They want new energy, new leadership, new ideas, and that's what I'm going to bring.
Well, and you say that you're traveling the state, these are the things that you're hearing. What I am also hearing is the idea of leadership just among Black elected officials. There, some years ago, the senator who filled in for Kamala Harris when she ascended to the vice presidency, LaFonza Butler. Am I saying?
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
I'm saying that right. I had an opportunity to speak with her last September, and just discussed, as a woman who probably held the highest seat for an African American in the state of California, how much coordination went on from top to bottom, because even whatever you do at the top for the federal government, that does not necessarily translate into significant lifts for those, because we've got Black elected officials at absolutely every single level. How do we fill those gaps, and how do we set a policy that is statewide so that everyone is on the same course, has the same marching orders to lift Black people across this state?
Yes, I'm with you 100% with that. That we need real partnership, and I am going to be that partner. I've been very intentional as lieutenant governor in making sure that we build relationships at every level of government. And I'm not just talking about federal, county, city, state. I am talking about the mayors of these towns. So I know that I can pick up the phone and call the mayor of Cairo, Illinois. I know how to reach out to mayors in small towns all across our state and let people know that we should be partners. That when you need, because part of the big issue, and I know you know this, part of the big issue is navigating these large systems. And we need to do more to be proactive to say, when you're looking for economic development, let's make sure you're connected with our Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity. I lead what's something called the Main Street Illinois program, so that small rural communities can have and can really kind of build their downtown areas and have walkable streets and core business corridors, because that's good for their towns. But one of the things that I did, I said, let's make sure that urban communities. So we went to Austin, we went to 51st Street in Chicago, we went to Madison, and we made sure that places like that got folded in, because guess what? Our communities have business districts and should have investment as well. I also think about the R3 program that I lead, the Restore, Reinvest, and Renew program, which has so far invested over $280 million into communities that have been most impacted by over incarceration and violence and poverty, by making targeted investments into those communities for violence prevention, economic development, youth development, civil legal aid, and more. This is an example of what we can do when we are intentional. But I have to go back, and I know it's not just everybody doesn't want to just hear about Donald Trump, but we do have to keep in mind what this president is doing. This president wants to take us back. We saw 300,000 plus Black women pushed out of the workforce in his first 6 months. And look at all of the things that are happening that impact our communities. So we need partnership. We need to make sure we're being strategic. We need to come together and have a real agenda about what we want to see happen at every level. And then we need partners, not just at the state level, but in Washington, D.C., who will make sure that we are working to bring those resources back to our community. That's going to be an important role that I will play as your next United States Senator.
Well, I thank you. I just have just a couple more questions, because you've answered everything that I've been asking you. But when we talk about, getting the resources back to the community, I believe in equity, not equal, but equity. So we know, because of the segregated state of how this state is in the city of Chicago, one of the most segregated cities in the country, would you see or be willing to use zip codes as a way in which to ensure that these resources are done equitably? We've got communities that have got stubborn destabilization, stubborn disinvestment, that have been looking for relief. Let's say going back to when Dr. Martin Luther King was killed. I mean, we're talking about 50, 60 years. So would that be one of the things to look at it, as far as how zip codes, by zip code as a way to try and ensure that the people who really need this the most get it? That's number one. And in what way would your administration, or you being a United States Senator, in what relief would you offer by way of repairing the Black community?
Yeah.
We've talked about reparations before, but in what way would you specifically want to assist in repairing what has happened with the Black community with this stubborn poverty, stubborn disinvestment?
Yes. And we see that in every single system. We see harm done to our communities, for example, when it comes to housing, which is another issue that I hear in every room that I'm going into. It is one of the top issues, how to have access to affordable housing and how people can buy their first home, which now the age of buying the first home has gone up to 40 because people can't afford it. And we know this is critical for building generational wealth. So some of the things that I think of are, how do we address not just affordable housing, but address the disproportionate impact on our communities of redlining that still has a legacy in not just cities like Chicago, but when we look at the whole state of Illinois and consider sundown towns and the impact of where we could live and where we can't live, we need to be intentional about making sure we provide housing assistance that addresses the issue of redlining, that addresses the fact that we weren't always able to buy in certain neighborhoods, and how do we expand access to that. When I talk about, the cuts to healthcare, safety net hospitals that are hospitals often in our communities, much like they are in rural communities, but safety net hospitals on the south and west sides of Chicago and in rural communities, those are on the chopping block. And we need to make sure that when we think about expanding access to healthcare, that we don't forget that we need to make sure that um, uh, our safety net hospitals can have access to the resources they needed to stay open, because too many of us are living in healthcare deserts. And then, of course, let's not forget our Black-owned businesses, our small businesses that now are, I'm talking to these businesses while I'm on the trail. And because of the cuts to DBE programs at the state level, they're not getting those contracts from the federal government anymore. These businesses that we already did not see uh, getting enough business from the federal government and not getting enough contract opportunities, now many of these businesses are getting absolutely zero because we have a president and an administration that has decided that we don't want to give special consideration to address the harm, the historic harm that has kept so many of our businesses from succeeding. So we need somebody, and I will be that person, who will fight for those businesses and make sure that we hold accountable and ask the questions. How many Black-owned businesses are you using? And how do we open up pathways for them to have access to contracts? Remember, this president is not going to be president forever. He's not going to be president forever. So we need someone in there right now who's going to fight, stand up, go toe to toe with him, and stop the damage. I do believe that we can flip the House, and we need everyone to come out and vote and make sure that we stand strong, maybe even flip, I don't know, but certainly stand strong in the Senate. We need new leadership in the Senate that's going to really push us and hold the line and fight for our communities. And we need to make sure that our voices are represented. And remember, we had a primary just this week where, and I want to give congratulations to State Representative Talarico on his victory in Texas, and certainly want to congratulate Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett on a well-fought campaign and all of her leadership. But this is an opportunity right here in Illinois, probably the best opportunity in this country, to make sure that we ensure that our voices are represented in the United States Senate, this race right here, and I have the best path to do so. And I want to take the voices of our community to Washington, D.C.
Just quickly, the federal government sets the rules and also the laws when it comes to banking. And throughout the history of this country, no matter who has been in office, Black people do not receive loans. They don't receive mortgages. They don't receive our fair share of anything. How would you address that? Because once again, as you mentioned, whoever's president right now will not always be president, But Black people are tired of having to fight. No matter who's in office, it seems like the fight is the same. So this is something that is directly within the purview of the United States Congress. How would you address the disproportionate amount of loans? We're talking about the neighborhood of Lincoln Park in Chicago receiving more loans than all of the Black residents around the entire city of Chicago, and yet nothing is done about that.
Yeah, I mean there's a long list of things that we need to make sure that we continue bringing some real accountability, and it certainly includes making sure that we investigate these banks, make and the credit unions, and making sure that we are asking the right questions. I mean, this serving in the Senate is an opportunity to bring, mortgage lenders and all of these entities before to say, we want to see the numbers. We want to see the data. And I'll just remind you, we have an administration now that doesn't want data, that doesn't want numbers, that is erasing research and things that will really help us hold these bad actors accountable. I talked about the housing crisis earlier. One of the big reasons why we have the housing crisis and not enough housing is being built, but the reason why we have affordability crisis in housing is because we have these big corporations that are buying up housing stock and raising the prices of the homes to sell, raising rents, and everyday people can't compete with Wall Street on that. And that's why when I talk about being the only candidate in this race, not accepting any corporate PAC money, it's because too much of the influence in Washington is about how to roll out the red carpet to corporate special interests that end up rewarding people in Congress. And we have a broken system that doesn't work for the people. So to hold them accountable, that's the commitment that I've made, and I've upheld that commitment to not accept corporate PAC money, because when I get to Washington, I'm going to fight for you, the people of Illinois, the American people, to make sure that we ask all of those questions. It's why I'm proud that I've been endorsed by End Citizens United, because this system, like you said, no matter who's in the White House, our communities too often don't feel like anything's getting better. And that's what government is for. Government can and should be a force for good. But we need courageous leaders who are going to push and to hold people accountable and make sure that we do the work that we need to do.
Lieutenant Governor, if you have a close, I'd love to hear it. It sounds like several times you had a close, but I would love to have it. Otherwise, I thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me, and thank you for the questions that you're asking. This is a critical race. It's not just a seat that's available for the first time in 30 years. It matters who's in this seat. And this is an opportunity to make sure, the best opportunity in this country and in this election cycle, to make sure that the voices of the Black community are represented. We've had 5 Black women that have served in the United States Senate. I'm proud to have the endorsement of Ambassador Carol Mosley Braun, the very first one, and would love to earn the support, your support as the listeners today on March 17th, which is Election Day. And you can go to julianastratton.com to learn a lot more about my platform and how I want to make your life better.
Thank you again for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
All right. We are so happy right now to be joined by Congresswoman Robin Kelly, who is the Congresswoman for Illinois' 2nd Congressional District. And she is also a candidate to become the junior senator from the state of Illinois to United States Congress. Congresswoman, thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
So, Congresswoman, here's where we are. We've got an election coming up on March 17th. Right now, I know there are lots of commercials. There's a lot of commercials from the candidates having a discussion. But the one thing that is kind of standing out to me, and what I'm hearing from a lot of African Americans, is as soon as they see the commercials, they hear about ICE. They hear about President Trump. And these are things for which many African Americans are not they're not being connected to. They don't feel connected to it because our communities have been suffering long before ICE was an issue, long before President Trump came to be. So I'm concerned about turnout. I'm concerned about the voices that I hear that are saying nothing ever changes in our community, no matter who's in office. What will your priority be should you be elected senator for Illinois?
Well, I'm running on a platform of people over profits. I know affordability is the issue no matter where I travel in the state. My district is a microcosm of the state, but traveling beyond my district, urban, suburban, and rural, I know affordability is the main issue for most people. No matter where you live, you want a roof over your head, you want a decent paying job, you want affordable, accessible, quality health care. We need to cap childcare costs. People are paying more for childcare than they are for rent or mortgage. Also, we need to make economic development investments, economic development growth, so people have economic opportunity. So I'm very clear on that. I think the issue with ICE is that was my community's South Shore that the helicopter landed. They did drag out Black Americans and had them tied up, Black children. So we can't ignore it completely because none of us are really safe when it comes to ICE. And where the detention center is, that's a Black mayor, that is the mayor of that city. So I don't think we can ignore it completely. It can affect, any of us, but I'm clear on what the main issue is: affordability, healthcare, economic opportunity.
And I don't think that I think African Americans are the most compassionate race of people on the earth. So I don't think that it's a matter of ignoring. But one thing that is definitely for sure, before ICE took over that building, there also was an issue with a lot of people who were brought into that building running gang activity. I mean, these are things that were on record. The residents of the building had been complaining about the conditions of the building. By the time that building was done, there was no gas. The hallways were flooded.
Mhm.
There was no electricity. So the residents were having issues before ICE ever came in and did anything. And that's the thing. I think that Black people, it's never a matter of one or the other. It just feels like our communities get neglected and other issues are pushed to the front. And I think that's what the problem is.
Sure. Yeah, I hear that, but I know in my uh, tenure as the Congresswoman, all the things I've done. When it comes to healthcare, I've been the chair of the Congressional Black Caucus Health Brain Trust for 10 years plus. I've done a lot of work, as you know, around maternal mortality and morbidity, which affects Black people more. I passed legislation dealing with organ transplantation and how many organs go to waste and how many organs Black people need. I've done passed legislation on the dental care for underserved communities. I've worked like hell on gun violence prevention, which affects our communities. My part of the bill we were able to get passed was the trafficking and straw purchasing. So I know that I have not forgotten the Black community, plus the things that I serve on the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation, which brings Black kids to DC. We pay you, we put you up because we know how expensive it is, so you could get, that experience. I'm the scholarships, that we give out. So I will never and never have forgotten the Black community. I know when other people get a cold, we get the flu. I'm the co-chair and co-founder of the Caucus on Black Women and Girls, and we've taken that all over the United States, speaking about wealth, health, education, economic, opportunities. So, and I want to continue that as the next U.S. Senator because Black people live all over the state of Illinois and need help all over the state of Illinois, need opportunity all over the state of Illinois.
Well, it's interesting. You're talking about your record. And when we talk about the state of Illinois right now, what you're walking into is a situation for African Americans that is dire. We have got the highest unemployment rate in the state of Illinois than any other state in the United States. When they looked at 20 of the worst cities for Black Americans, the 5 are located in Illinois: Champaign-Urbana, the Moline, Rock Island area, Danville, Peoria, which you know Peoria because you attended Brown
Peoria.
University, and also Springfield, where our state's capital is. So we're talking about several metrics unemployment, housing, the amount of money that people can make, the division, the huge disparity in how much money a Black family as opposed to a white family. So, what are some of the things that you've already done, but also, I mean, you're going to be a senator. So,
Mhm.
what would you be able to use your power to do to combat this so Black people for the first time can be where we need to be in the state of Illinois?
Well, first of all, we need to raise the minimum wage. It's been on the federal level. It's been $7.25 for way, 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 way too long. And as I said, working toward capping childcare costs. People are paying more for childcare than they are rent and mortgage. But the bottom line is millionaires, billionaires, and corporations need to pay their fair share. I mean, we all pay our fair share. Some of us feel like we pay more than our fair share. Some of them pay nothing. So we need to close those loopholes so that we can invest in the communities that need the investment. And I say not equal investment, but equitable investment, because as you know, we don't all start, from the same area. In my district, I have Hopkins Park, Pembroke, and I've had to help them with the internet, which we've helped them with. I've had to help them with how they heat their homes, because of the way.
Right. That has been a big story because that is a majority African American
Right.
community that they've had issues with infrastructure, just with how to heat their homes.
Exactly. And we just work with Fort Heights because of their water issues. And we work with Fort Heights and Chicago Heights and kind of help them negotiate a deal. And, the deal is that people are paying for their water in Fort Heights, but they have such old pipes. So, trying to work with them on infrastructure, and things like that. And I would build on my record of what I'm doing now. When we came in, we started, everybody doesn't do this, housing fair, so people wouldn't lose, their homes. I have a youth opportunity fair coming up, and where youth can find jobs, find a hobby, mentoring, all kind of things, registering to vote, and then we also have a job fair for older folks, that are looking for a job. And we've done this and been complimented on having some of the best, youth and job fairs, of anybody, which I'm very, very proud of. And I know that people have gotten jobs, from the things that we've done. So I have a youth cabinet. So I'm engaging young people like from 10th, 11th, and 12th grade, so they know you need to be involved, you need to have a voice. And it's mixed, but most of the young people are Black from all over my district.
Well, I'm glad you brought up equity because that's the thing that's most important. We're not talking about equal,
Oh.
equal resource. We're talking about equity to get to equal, right? So, what is the process by which to ensure that there is equity brought? Is this something, are you willing to look? Okay, let's just be frank. Illinois is, and in Chicago in particular, very segregated. I can give you a zip code and you would be able to tell me the race of people that live there and what circumstances they're living in. Let's be frank. So, is it a thing of passing legislation that pays attention to the zip codes, or is this something that people will say once again, where everybody has to be helped for anybody to be helped? Because that's not helping the African American community.
Well, first of all, if you go from the south side to the north side, just the quality of life and how long you live, changes drastically. And that's why I've worked so much, on healthcare. And Martin Luther King said that's the biggest form of discrimination. Healthcare. So continuing my work on trying to have quality, affordable, accessible healthcare. I've been very, again, I have to go back to my district because that's where I work, but I've been very supportive of the federally qualified healthcare centers, and resources I've been able to bring to them. And I just brought $1 million to Allgale Gardens so they could work on their youth program, youth entrepreneurship, accountability, and empowerment. Just things like this, I feel, are very, very helpful to the community. I mean, I stand on the shoulders of others, but I was the one finally able to get Pullman to be a national park, and that has really improved the economic development, the tourism. There's different businesses that are there that weren't there before. Not taking all the credit at all. I just was able to get the legislation across the finish line. And I would continue to do, things like that. And also, I've had advisory groups, people closest to the problem or closest to the solution. And I listen, like small business, which, I come from small business. My grandparents owned a grocery store. So very empathetic there, knowing that youth need things to do. Nothing, as I say, stops a bullet like an opportunity. And that opportunity might be a job, a hobby, a mentorship, a group that you belong to. So pushing those things. But again, I do think that we need to get, like I said, my people over profits, get the resources in and then get the resources to the right communities that need them. And education, the same thing.
Just a couple more questions, because one of the things that you mentioned were businesses. And in African American communities, we're not comfortable with the number of businesses that we own outright in our own communities, because we know that the dollar should turn over many times in our community, and right now it doesn't. And I know for sure that federal legislation regulates banks. They regulate the loans, they regulate the mortgages. When we're not getting mortgages in our communities, you guys regulate that. You right now, and you will be someone who regulates that. How will you address bringing more capital, bringing the ability to get loans, to have mortgages on a home, to have a business? How will you address that so that we can get equity?
Well, I know, Maxine Waters, she's the head of our financial services, and I know they work on this, but I think that we need to hold banks more accountable. When they say they have the CRAs, let's evaluate those CRAs. Who is really getting the money? Who's applying?
Yeah.
Also, just I was just speaking recently about even starting more black banks. There are black banks, but I know someone that helped found one in Columbus, Ohio, because I think that will help us also. Just really helping us help ourselves. But I think holding banks more accountable, because they do have to come to us for things also. And we shouldn't be, so free to give them what they want. But also, it goes back to who's voting, who's in the seats, who's getting the bills out of committee. You know what I mean? Like, it's tough sometimes when you're fighting with one arm behind your back, but we can still, bring the issue up. And then the other thing is not catering as a citizen, finding out what banks do what, and not putting your money in that bank. We all, it's a village, and we can all help the situation, like people did with one of the retail places. People stopped shopping there and they felt it, or they're feeling it.
They're feeling it. Today it was just announced that that place, they have to put more billions in because they've so many people have taken billions out. So I hear that. But when these banks keep opening in our communities and then will not lend to us, I mentioned this before. People in Lincoln Park get more mortgages than the entire of all the African Americans around the entire city of Chicago. These things are not changing. We got to figure out how to really hold them accountable. What are the penalties? And to try and not right. It's not fair. Should you be elected as the junior senator from the state of Illinois, you would be the highest ranking African American official that we have in public office.
Mhm.
And right now, there seems to be absolutely no coordination from the federal level down to the state level, down to the municipal level, as far as any type of putting policies together, priorities together to move the African American community forward. There seems to be a dearth of leadership. How would you address that?
Well, I will do what I do now, but just on a bigger level. I meet with my state reps, I meet with my commissioners, and I meet with my mayors. That's why all my mayors are with me.
It becomes much larger at that point
No, no,
because
no. No. That's what I said. I will do what I do now. Remember, when I was a party chair, I traveled this whole state and met with all kind of people, and I would do that again, or have representation also throughout the state. If I can't be there, someone will be there. It's what I've done my whole time in office, maybe on different levels, but I would continue the same thing because people are focused on what they're focused on. You know what I mean? If you work for local, you know local better than me. So I do need to talk to you. I do need advice. Same thing with small businesses, same thing with ministers. I could think of a lot of different groups I meet with, my school superintendents, my police. So I would do that same thing. I know it's on a bigger level, but it can be done.
Yeah, yeah, and it's something that we're asking for.
Right.
We're asking to see our leadership work together because the issues are the same all over the state that
Mhm.
are impacting our communities, but there
Right.
seems to be no coordination and no will to work together to say, hey, this is what I need at the local level. How can we get this done? The money is coming. All of it is coming from the top down when we're looking at it in that way. How do we get the resources where they need to be? How do we push the policies where they need to be and make sure that we can all move forward together?
And also,
That's
I would meet with the various, like the Illinois Legislative Black Caucus, which I used to be one, or the city Black Caucus. Like I would look at it, in that way too. And some of us, again, we do work together. There's legislation we had on the federal level that I passed down, on to the state, or if there's an idea we couldn't do on the federal level, I passed it down to the state or even the county. So there's some of that being done now, but not enough, as you say.
But you know what, Congresswoman, I want to thank you so much. I want to give you
Thank
an
you.
opportunity to close because although it would be a historic thing to have another African American woman come out of Illinois, I think Black people are past the historic part of it. We've got so many elected officials at this point that we're not feeling that we're getting what we have put into this. We're not getting back what we put into the tax dollars. We're not living in the communities. Not everyone, but many are not living in the communities that reflect the amount of work that we do. So I want you to just let our audience know why you should be the choice.
I should be the choice because I have always done the work on every level of government. And I hear what you're saying, but I think there is a clear choice here. I've done the work locally, in the county, in the state, and now the federal government. I've done the work as far as legislation, but also in my district and serving the public. I don't think my staff, I'm not saying we're better than people, but we're second to none. And I can hit the ground running. I have the relationships. I ask people constantly, please check the record. I'm a workhorse, not a show horse. I'm transformative, not transactional. And very important, I'm bossed and I'm bought. And that's very, very important too. Just because you have the most money does not mean you're the best candidate or you have done the most. And the other thing is we do have to take money out of politics. That's something else I would work on, campaign finance reform, because that's why so many millionaires are in Congress, because they could afford to be, or depending on who your friends are. So again, I do the work and I'm not afraid to stand up. I show up, speak up and stand up, even when it's, the machine may not like what I say, or, it is not business as usual with me.
Thank you so much, Congresswoman.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you. You have a great day too. Raja Krishnamoorthi, thank you so much for joining our audience today.
Hey, good morning, Kim. How are you?
I'm doing very well, and I'm happy to be speaking with you. For those who are listening, can you describe the district that you serve right now?
So it's basically all the suburbs plus a part of the city near the airport, essentially, O'Hare Airport. And, basically it has a lot of Cook County in there. And so I'm constantly working with elected officials all over Cook County and in the city, and proud to do so.
Okay. And so when the work that you're doing right now, what are some of the committees that you work on? And, we know that in general, elected officials, especially in Congress, they have special things that are, their specialties, the things that they care about a lot. What are some of the things that you've been working on while you're in Congress?
Thank you. So I'm on a few committees. I'm on the Oversight Committee, which probably some of your listeners know about, has been doing its best to try to hold Trump administration accountable, but also holding, corporate bad actors and special interests accountable. So there I gone after the e-cigarette industry that is trying to hook a generation of kids onto vapes. I've gone after big tobacco, but also, Johnson & Johnson, which sold carcinogenic baby powder and targeted Black and brown communities in doing so. A couple other committees I'm on. I'm on the Intelligence Committee, so that helps to guard our national security. And then finally, I'm on the China Committee. I'm the ranking member of the China Committee. Hakeem Jeffries appointed me to that top spot to try to, basically improve our competitiveness as a country and make sure that we become the best version of ourselves as a country in competing with China, but also other countries.
Raja, we're seeing all of these commercials. You've been playing a lot of commercials. I just want to let you know that. So what are some of the things that you've done that have targeted and have specifically touched Black people around the state of Illinois?
Well, I worked with Alderman Coleman, who I'm incredibly proud to have in my corner. What a leader. I worked with to, essentially provide emergency relief in certain communities when SNAP benefits were taken away or frozen by Donald Trump during the shutdown. Now, you may know this. I've mentioned this before. I lived in public housing and on food stamps when my family fell on hardship. So I know the struggle that people are going through out there. And so my whole why, if you will, my mission in life is to try to allow, enable, and make sure that other people have access to the American dream the same way that many of you and me have had. And this is part and parcel of why I'm running for Senate.
Okay. So having access to the American dream, well, let's really get into that. You're very familiar with some of the struggles that people have in communities like Englewood. Of course, we want everyone to have the safety net of SNAP for as long as they need to have it. But we also want our communities to be built so that we don't have to be on SNAP. The resources that other people, if you drive through the city of Chicago, you almost know exactly when you're getting to a lot of the Black neighborhoods because
yes.
You see dilapidated buildings, you see vacant lots, you see that where there should be businesses, there aren't. So what I just want to speak right now about that. How do we make sure Black people get the same capital to start businesses that they've been shut out of as other races of people, or even loans from banks, which these are like federal laws that can do something about that. We're still not getting mortgages. How will you fix those things?
Well, first of all, you're absolutely right. I think economic development is at the heart of what we need to do in these communities to make them flourish and thrive over the long term. I think the reason why so many pastors, for instance, in the Black community are behind me is because not only am I talking about trying to bring businesses, secure capital, and otherwise, devote time to the uplift of these communities. But I've also put forward some ideas to do so. I'll just give you a couple. I think that we should give possibly lower taxes and regulatory relief to small businesses that actually form in these areas. It's not enough to just, have quote unquote opportunity zones, which is a Trump administration concept. That did not work. We need to do more, and we need to kind of put our shoulder behind the wheel. And I actually think that this is something that could unite not just, the south and west side of Chicago, but also with certain parts of rural Illinois and downstate Illinois, where I see the same problem.
But let me ask you, Raja, but the one thing that people always say, elected officials always get out of that, they know where the issues are, but then they say, well, we can't strategically just send relief where we know the issues are. How do you get around that? How do you get around the idea that we know that where the problems lie, but then people say, well, we have to help everyone?
We have to be honest. We have to devote resources where it's needed most. And where it's needed most is where you see economic development the least. And that's why I think that we can bring together a coalition of folks who are in the south and the west side of Chicago, but also in East St. Louis, and also in certain parts of rural Illinois that are in big trouble as well.
We've got Black people in this race. We've got 2 Black women who have definitely been elected officials for some time. As a matter of fact, one of your congressional peers. Robin Kelly, we've got Lieutenant Governor Juliana Stratton. We're going to have other Black people who jump in this race. Why should the Black community choose you over people who are in their community?
I like Juliana. I like Robin. They're good people. They're good elected officials. I would not say anything negative about them personally. All I can say is what's positive about me. I believe that I'm best qualified to meet this moment, I think, in two ways. One, I think the economic challenges and pain points that people have are kind of uppermost in their minds, whether it's affording groceries or whether it's affording childcare and health care or education of their children. Those are issues that I've worked on for a decade in Congress, and as a former small business person, I feel well suited to tackle. The second is, how do you keep the Trump administration accountable? How do you stand up to bullies and bad actors? That's what I've been doing for the last decade, and now I have to stand up to the biggest bully of them all, Donald Trump.
Okay. Well, I will say this, when it comes to all of the socio-economic indicators and just lifestyle indicators of people who live in Illinois, no matter how hard Black people are working and their families are working, we tend to be at the bottom of all of those meters, all of those metrics. I guess that's what I'm saying. And it's a very stubborn statistic that we're trying to move. Are you going to do that? Are you going to make sure that Black people can be proud to be in the state of Illinois and achieve this quote unquote American dream that so many others are enjoying?
We have no choice. We have to. We have to do everything in our power. And I feel that we have to do a few things, Kim. One, we have to collaborate with local leaders, people who are on the ground, who know.
Oh, wait, hold on, Raja. That's important. That's important because right now we don't see any type of collaboration really at the highest levels all the way through to local.
Yes,
and that's something that you'll do?
Yes, ma'am. And I'm kind of known for that.
Okay.
I'm if you have a problem, you dial 1-800-RAJA, and I try to do everything I can to help. Secondly, we have to make sure that we fight discrimination. Unfortunately, it's with us. We can't say that we're in some kind of post-discrimination era after Obama or something like that. Unfortunately, it still exists. It's present. We have to be honest about that. Third, it's kind of going back to what I said before, which is I believe very strongly that the best way to deal with some of the problems that afflict some of our communities is bringing economic development to those areas. And that means sustainable development, where we actually have small business formation in those areas. We help the small businesses that are already there, and then we attract more. That's the way you create an ecosystem where people can live, they can work, and we can actually create hopefully a flywheel effect where we continue to create prosperity in those areas. And I'm dedicated to that.
Congressman, thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much, Kim, and thank you for your leadership as well. And I'm so honored to be able to be on your program.
Oh, that's very kind of you. Thank you so much.